part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James. It's over. It's over. Cleveland is a city of champions once again. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.
That sound means it's time for Cavs on the Break NBA podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. I'm your host, Chase Smith, and with me, he's the NBA writer for hoopswire.com, the assistant managing editor at outkick.com. He's our Cavs insider, national NBA writer, Sam Amico. Sam, the NBA is back, baby. Let's go.
It is an exciting time. It seemed to have come quickly after last season, but I like it that way. So here we are.
They had a short offseason, but we are back on the regular NBA schedule. They had to figure something out to kind of get back to the regular, like, pre-COVID schedule, what they had. Now we are back. Now this is normal. Now they'll have the normal regular season games, normal all-star, like everything is back to where it was. And to some players' chagrin, to some others you don't hear about, but they are back. And it is back. And also, guess who's back, Sam? The Cavs. The Cavs are back.
They seem back and better than ever. Obviously, we're a week into the season, but
no, the Cavs are
a lot of fun so far. Been a lot of fun.
The Cavs are back, baby. And I have this question because last year the Cavs started off really hot and everyone was excited. We were excited. We were talking about playoffs and 8th seed. And that was, we don't need to rehash last year. Last year we started out the season 3-1. This year we're 3-2, winners of 3 straight over the Hawks, Nuggets, and Clippers, teams you've heard of in the playoffs. Road victories at that. 2 on the road, Nuggets and Clippers. The Cavs are 2-1 on the road. Sam, what is different than last year? Let's just start there. What's different about this year's 3-2 record in this team than last year's 3-1 record in that team? What's different?
Well, the answer to that, first of all, is easy because they had to go out on the West Coast right away and had to, go to Denver, who, if you remember, was in the Western Conference Finals 2 seasons ago.
Yep.
And then they had to go to the Clippers, who, if you remember, was in the Western Conference Finals last year. Yep. And, of course, they started this winning streak at home, this 3-game streak at home, against the Atlanta Hawks, who were in the Eastern Conference Finals last year. So The moral of the story is the Cavs are going to the conference finals somewhere.
I love it.
But, I think that's what's different is you have gone on the road, this West Coast trip, where I just looked at the schedule and I said, they're not going to win a game on that trip. And guess what? That's understandable because they're so young and it's unfair that they have to go out there that early. And sure enough, and not only go out to the West Coast, but I mean, you're talking, Nuggets, Clippers, Lakers, Suns, which is totally, those are 4 teams that are expected to be in contention in the Western Conference. And the fact that they won 2 of those, and then they have a, 5th game at the end of this trip, this has already been a successful trip. You just want to finish strong in terms of, maybe not, you don't have to win these next 3 games, but you just try to stay competitive in 2 out of 3 of them, give yourself a chance. And the other difference too, Chase, is they have Evan Mobley and they have Lauri Markkanen. They have 2 new starters, and both have been very productive in their own way.
Would you say what translates the most to their success, the addition of Mobley and Markkanen, or the fact that we have a handful of players that have been in the system for a while? They're growing, maybe a little more stable organization, and players like Garland are better. Sexton, they're learning how to play and know their role, or does that, factor into their 3 and 2 success as of now, or all of the optimism?
I think that one reason that I've seen to be optimistic is what both of those things, what you just said with Mobley and Markkanen additions, have been huge because they've been able to move Love to the bench where he's played pretty well against opposing reserves. The addition of Ricky Rubio has
about him later
has been fantastic. But also, Chase, I think that they've been able to realize that their unique lineup in terms of having 2 7-footers in Markkanen and Mobley, 6'11" guy in Allen, and then you have 2 little guards by NBA standards in Garland and Sexton. That's a very unique lineup. You don't see that type of lineup in the NBA. Most of the lineups in the NBA, frankly, feature a lot of 6'6", 6'8" guys that are playing on the wing and that are perimeter shooters. And, that the Cavs have, whereas a lot of people, I would say, going into the season, myself included, had their doubts about whether a lineup like this would work. So far, the Cavs have figured out how to use this to their advantage, especially when you talk about Mobley and Allen near the basket, protecting the basket. That really forces teams to shoot from the outside. And that, that's a make or miss situation when you're shooting from the outside. Now, if you're playing somebody like Golden State, obviously you might run into problems, but the teams that they've played, Denver and the Clippers, have not been able to hit outside shots, and the Cavs have done a nice job defensively on the perimeter.
Yes.
So I think all of those things have added up. Defensively, they've been much better. Obviously, I can't remember what they hold the Nuggets to, 87 points, maybe.
It's like 99, 87 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. The Clippers under 100, and the Clippers 79. It's tough to score against the Cavs right now. And part of that is effort, but part of it is philosophy, system, and the available talent that they have.
Look, no one ever questioned when the Cavs were at the worst defense, Sexton's rookie year. That was not a good stretch of Cavs defense. No one questioned Sexton's drive to play defense or his heart to play defense. Just needed some help around him. And all of a sudden they draft this, unicorn in the third position in this year's draft, who is affecting shots on the perimeter when they have to switch and is a force to be reckoned with inside the paint. I think that is the number one thing, Sam, that attributes to how this team this year is different than last year. Because last year, there was a glimmer of playoff hope, and they benched Andre Drummond, and that they just didn't want. They even wanted to try to sniff the playoffs last year, even if they could have had something going. I don't think that's the case this year. I think with what Evan Mobley, have you heard his nickname, Slim Duncan, what they're calling him online?
Yeah, I think that's it. That's a good one. I don't know that I've heard that, but that's a good one.
Yeah, Slim Duncan. Because listen, defense translates and covers a multitude of sins. Good defense isn't just a flash in the pan. Good defense is something that can withstand dry spells, that can withstand hot shooter's touch. Defense doesn't go through a lot of droughts most of the time. Unlike a team that is shooting really well for a season or has a hot hand or hot player off the bench, defense translates and it covers a multitude of sins. For instance, against the Nuggets, we had a ton of turnovers and shot terrible behind the arc. And guess what? We still won. That's unheard of in 2021, Sam. And I think all of that goes to defense. It goes to the length that we have, the length that we can cover on the court. And we got guys that can play defense. Evan Mobley, Jared Allen. Sexton, they get after it. Okoro. I love Okoro. He is, I just love the versatility he also offers to the team. But I think it all starts with defense, and it is just phenomenal holding those two teams to those. If this was any other team, if this was Boston, if this was the Knicks, if this was the Bulls, if this was the Lake, it would be leading. It would just be, especially 2 games against, it would be all you hear about. It's because it's the Cavs and they're young that they're not getting more attention. I think people are kind of sniffing how good they are, but if this was any other team, it would just be all over SportsCenter, Sam. Or all over HoopsWire. Sorry.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Or
they are
Outkick.
all over HoopsWire.
Yeah.
But I would say that, to hold those teams to what they did in their own buildings too.
Yeah.
And then beating the Hawks, that was kind of an ugly game. And the Cavs have the potential to be kind of a flashy up and down team on offense, but that might not win them a whole lot of games if that's all their focus is, because they are so young and it's going to be sporadic. offensively. But like you just said, defensively, and I read a quote from a opposing general manager, and I can't remember where I saw it. I saw it somewhere on Twitter, and I don't know who said it or if he even was the GM, might have been a scout, but he said they're going to be impossible to score on because of those two guys. If the way Mobley has come around defensively, and we saw against the Hawks how JB Bickerstaff he was running a 3-2 and had Mobley up top. So I mean he just got a ton of versatility. He's his own player, but he does have the potential to make an impact similar to a Tim Duncan, a Kevin Garnett, a Chris Bosh. I never was a huge Bosh fan, but he was a good player, obviously. And I think if Mobley can be along the lines of that type of Garnett type, which is asking a lot. I mean, Kevin Garnett, first ballot Hall of Famer, but the things I've seen from Mobley and the impact he makes at both ends, and I really have been impressed with his passing for a 7-footer. He just looks so comfortable for a 7-footer. Sometimes you see 7-footers who don't, but he's got that smoothness to him, that natural athleticism.
Yep.
And really, other than getting in the weight room and getting some experience on the court, I really don't see any shortcomings with the guy. So look, he was the highest pick of the Kobe Altman era, number 3, and he looks like a steal even there. He's just has that type of upside and potential.
I had 3 reasons why this year's Cavs team is different than last year's Cavs team at the hot start. One was defense. Secondly was Evan Mobley, and what a great transition. What he brings to the table, Sam, is something that I've been clamoring for 2.5, 3 years on this podcast. He brings us the possibility of having the best player on the court, without a doubt. And no matter how great Sexton was on a couple nights of the season, no matter how great Garland could be, no matter how much potential I want to see in Isaac Okoro, the fact of the matter is Evan Mobley has a chance to be the best player on the basketball court when the Cavs play almost any team. And he has the perfect mix of height. I mean, you look at now I'm going to say a name, and I'm not saying he could be like this person, but you look at what Giannis can do because of his height, right? What he brings on defense, how he can control the ball, how the offense runs through him. I think they're different players, but to have someone in that mold with that possibility who this early on has that kind of control and ability to see what's going on around it, like that's Sam, that doesn't happen a lot. And he gives us the ability to have the best player on the court. And when you have the best player on the court in the NBA, you have a chance to win a lot of games.
Yeah.
And I think
that's exactly it.
And I didn't want to put this one because I think defense is that's what's going to sustain us. But a lot of that defense has to do with what Mobley can bring and how it makes adjustments, how it makes everything else work. And it all starts with Slim Duncan, Evan Mobley. I love that nickname, with Evan Mobley. And he's a baller. Sam is amazing.
Well, I think that the one thing that not only is it, if it were just him and he didn't have much help there, then maybe it wouldn't be. But the fact that you also have Jared Allen protecting the basket, and Mobley can get rebounds, that's obviously a huge part of defense. Obviously, not giving the opponent a second shot when they miss, it's big. And I just think, I don't think a lot of people, because of the way the Cavs have been in the past few seasons, expected him to come in and make the type of impact that he's made. And frankly, the guy's only going to get better. He's going to have his moments where he looks like a rookie. He hasn't had many yet, but he's going to have some, and that's okay. But by and large, if your top 3 pick in the draft can end up being, an instant starter, a guy who can change the course of the franchise, which he very clearly has that potential, if not changing it on his own. It overcomes a lot of ills. He is, people would say it looked like their backcourt was too small. Maybe it's not a fit. I was one of those people. I still am not positive, but I have a lot less doubts about it because you have a super talented big guy, and you have a talented big guy in Allen, and you have a very talented offensive big man, small forward type in Markkanen. So I think that what they've shown us over the last 3 games is look what this team has the potential to become. It has a potential to become, excuse me, something much better than and much faster than people suspected, including myself. I think including a lot of, just Cavs fans who I talk to on a regular basis. Now, there's going to be bumps in the road, obviously. It's a long season. You've got 70, he's played 5 games. You got 77 more left. You're going to have to deal with injuries. You're going to, they're already dealt with Darius Garland being out. Now Okoro's out. You're going to have some of that throughout the course of the season. But if you can keep this young nucleus playing, say, 60 plus games together, and they're feeling good about themselves like they are now, you're really on to something, especially with the talent like we've been talking about in Mobley. So I think there's another reason. I don't know. You said you had 3 reasons. I only heard you list 2: defense, Mobley. What was your third one?
I haven't listed the third one yet.
Thunder.
Yeah. My third one, again, is another byproduct of Mobley, but it's just the team has more defined and clear roles for everybody. Mobley was kind of like this missing piece that helps everyone understand what they're doing and how they're doing. And that speaks to, again, the consistency with Bickerstaff, what he has in store. But all of a sudden, Kevin Love has a place. All of a sudden, Ricky Rubio kind of understands his role with what he's been brought in to do. And because it seems things are a little more clearly defined, you're having players slide into these roles that they didn't know what they needed to do last year. Maybe they thought they needed to do more or didn't know what they had to do and they were doing not enough. This year, that doesn't seem to be the case. Everyone seems to know what their role is. And that I think also speaks to how this team is different, is because of Evan Mobley and how he's able to be inserted right away and provide this caliber of play. All of a sudden, Garland has a point guard. Okay, yeah. All of a sudden, you have Markkanen. Oh, okay, yeah. This is what. All of a sudden, you have Caleb. Oh, okay, yeah. All of a sudden, you have Rubio. Oh, yeah, okay. And I just think it just makes everything so much more clear. And it's a team, Sam. It's a team.
Yeah, well, that's a great point. Is that when you understand your roles, the players are, and the nice thing too is last year you kind of felt like Sexton, if he didn't score 24 points, you weren't really going to have a shot. This year, I think he's had 14 one game they won. He had a monster game against the Clippers, obviously, but it doesn't have to fall all on his 6'1" shoulders in terms of scoring. They have other weapons. They have, Jared Allen has had a huge night. Love had a huge night in Denver. And Garland has had a lot of very underrated quiet nights that really have played a big role in them getting wins, even though Correct. He has maybe dominated a box score.
Correct.
So, and I'll throw in the fourth thing here, Chase, is that if you remember when I talked about the Atlanta Hawks last year and the strides they made after really their coaching change, but the strides they made, all young teams need this, and the Cavs have it now. They have some veterans that are coming off the bench, and they have Love, and they have Rubio, and they have a very nice young player in Okoro. Let's not forget him, as I'm sure you won't.
I won't. I won't.
But when he's healthy, I mean, they have a guy. They have 3 guys off the bench, and as well as Chetty. I'll throw Chetty in there too. They have guys coming off the bench who have been here before. And you really need those veteran voices. Last year, at the end of the year, when they were losing all those games, and Love was kind of the only veteran guy, he was kind of like on an island. But now with him and Rubio and those guys playing against other teams' reserves, that's been huge for them. Rubio's been fantastic, and Love's been, Love's played his role pretty well. I got to give him credit. And those guys are probably, JB Bickerstaff said this the other night, they're probably starters on most teams. But the fact that they're coming off the bench has just really given the Cavs a boost playing against other teams' reserves. I think Okoro is probably a starter in a lot of spots too. So the fact he's coming off the bench now,
Okoro's a starter even on the All-Star team, Sam. So yeah, we all agree on that.
Would probably, yeah. I'm sure. So,
I mean, every team, including All-Star team, Okoro's a big snub on the 75 Diamond Club. That's all I gotta say. No, so I want to talk about, because we've talked about the Hawks a lot and how that could be a blueprint for this Cavs team and what we need to do. Sam, the more that I watch them and the more that I see our roster, I don't think that's a fair comparison anymore. I think maybe kind of like what the Bucks have and how they use their team. I think that is more suited to, I don't think Garland is a Trae Young player. I think he's more of like a Drew Holiday kind of point guard. I don't think he's, and I think like what the Bucks have, I think we closely are way more similar to the Bucks than the Hawks. Just kind of like,
it'd be nice to get some of the outside shooting off the bench that the Bucks have. The Cavs, their best outside. Well, Love is solid, but
I think Markkanen maybe can fill that too. Like they're hoping.
Yeah, he certainly could. They still need another perimeter shooter, whether it's a veteran or a young player down the road or something. But they definitely need that. They have their own look, and I think that was what made people think, oh, this is a really weird built team, and I think people held that against them, and I certainly know that I was more apt to hold it against them than say this is so unique that it's working.
Yeah.
And so far it has. I mean, again, you don't see teams like this with three really just, let's just say 3 7-footers, even though they're not all 7 feet, but they're close enough. So 3 7-footers and then 2 6'1" guards. That's your starting line.
I love
That's just so weak.
I love it.
And
I love it.
You know what? It's worth loving because right now it's really been paying off.
Yeah.
I'm glad to see that they didn't just say, you know what, we're going to drag Love out there as a starter again because he's a veteran and he's earned it. They've made some hard choices. Excuse me. That was not an easy choice for them to say, yeah, Kevin Love, we're going to pay you $60 million over the next 2 years to come off the bench, even though you won a championship in 2016. But that's his best role on this team. And they made the hard choice to tell him, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to use you. And all we ask from you is to make the most of the minutes you've been given. And so far he has done it. And Rubio, Ricky, you would start on most teams. You're probably good enough to start on this team, but that's not how we need you. We traded for you to come in, close games. Sexton said it last night after the Clippers win. Rubio's been fantastic in terms of when we need calm down and things get a little weird and a little wild, he comes in the game and true professional, just gets everybody calmed down, runs the offense, gets people set. So, frankly, Chase, this is going to sound crazy. I look at this team and the way they've played so far, and, they've really had 2 bad quarters. They are 2 bad quarters away from being 5-0. Now, I mean, you got to, it's a lot different being 5-0 in the NBA than it is.
That's my kind of take, baby. That's what I'm like. That's why I like to hear in Cavs in the break.
Well, from what I've seen, and I'm trying just to tell you the truth, what I've seen, and that's they've had 2 bad quarters. Other than that, they have been fantastic. Now, Chase, we all know this is the NBA. There's going to be a night where you have an absolute clunker. Everybody did it. LeBron's Cavs did it. LeBron's Lakers have done it a lot this season. Michael Jordan's Bulls had them where they would just go somewhere and get blown out. So that's going to happen sometimes. What you need to do if you're the Cavs is try to keep that at a minimum. And you also need to try to make sure it doesn't happen against LeBron's Lakers Friday night. You want to put on a good show, go back in there and keep building off what you're building. Don't got to win, but put on a show.
Yeah. So the Cavs right now are 3-2, a really good 3-2. It feels very positive 3-2. We're on this West Coast road trip where we play the Lakers on Friday to finish out the slate with the Suns on Saturday. It finishes out the week 2 slate. And then the final game is the first game of slate 3 It's in Charlotte, but it's still on the road. So before we go to break here, Sam, how do you see this West Coast trip playing out against the Lakers and the Suns? Two teams in the Western Conference Finals last year. The Suns making it to the NBA Finals again, just doesn't let up. What a tough road trip. How do you see these last two games playing out?
Well, I'm the bad guy to ask because I predicted them to go 0-5 on the trip. And I will say this: the Lakers nor the Suns have their act together. The Suns lost the same night the Cavs beat the Clippers in LA. The Suns lost at home to the Kings. So the Suns have not, and they got blown out by the Trailblazers. They're kind of going through the motions. They're almost treating it like it's the preseason. So I think you're going to have a shot. Now, obviously, the Lakers have kind of been a mess. You look at, they started 0-2. They barely hung on at home to beat Memphis, which is a good team, but they barely hung on at home to beat Memphis after starting 0-2. Then, they barely hung on without LeBron. LeBron's missed the last two games, but they barely hung on and won in overtime against the Spurs on the road. And then the same night the Cavs beat the Clippers, the Lakers blew a 26-point lead to the Oklahoma City Thunder. At the time, the Thunder were 0-4. So
LeBron missed that game so we could watch the Cavs game.
Yeah, he was tweeting about the Cavs.
Yeah, he was.
But, one thing I'll say is the Cavs right now are riding a high.
Yep.
And the Lakers have been on a low. And, granted, the Lakers, as the oldest team in NBA history, are going to, and being at home, probably getting LeBron back for tomorrow's game, for Friday's game, that's going to be a big boost. And, the Cavs, the law of averages says the Lakers are going to play a good game here eventually, and the Cavs are going to play a crappy one. So, it's a possibility. It's also a possibility.
Just rip the Band-Aid off, Sam. Where are we at with the Lakers? What do you think, man? Just rip it off.
Oh, no, I'm not predicting a loss because I'm going to tell you the other possibility is the Lakers still don't have their act together.
Yeah.
They're not meshing. Westbrook is not a fit, or it's going to take him a while to fit if he does at all. And the Cavs have just been playing so well. And guess what? The Cavs have the size to match up with them and make them shoot from the outside. And they're not a good outside shooting team.
No, they're not.
The bottom line is, the Cavs, I think, on paper, you would think that they have a shot. If they go out and play like they've been playing, they'll win that game. They really will. LeBron or not, it won't matter because they're going to force the Lakers. If the type of defense the Cavs have been playing will make the Lakers absolutely miserable.
Yeah, I think we split Lakers Suns. I don't know which teams we lose and beat. I can see us winning both. I can see us losing both but I think we're going to split. I would predict we beat the Suns and we lose to the Lakers. That's me. I think LeBron plays, and I think he just wants them to know, hey, I'm still king, and I gave you some shouts, but I think he also wants to play to see really how good they are. I think he's really intrigued by this team, and again, pure speculation, but I say that Brown plays, and I think Lakers win. I think we beat the Suns. I think we split, but that's just me.
Cavs are a lot younger than the Lakers. Most teams are younger than the Lakers, but the Cavs are a lot younger. Going to have a lot of energy. They want that game, and they've been sitting there waiting in LA. I mean, it's not like they had to, this is almost like a home game because they've been sitting there and staying at the same hotel, going back to the same arena. I like the Cavs odds. I know I'm crazy, but I like their odds.
No.
I think Phoenix has already lost at home. They're coming off, that probably served as a wake-up call for them. So I'm going to say that the Cavs will split too, but I'm going to pick them to beat the Lakers and lose to the Suns.
Look, and I think what Mobley offers is, hey, you never know. We can compete. This piece that could be the bet. Like, that's what Mobley offers. So all good things. Sam, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to do a segment, How Does This End? One of our favorite segments here in Cavs on the Break. And then we'll look at week 3 slate, and then we'll close things out. Stick around. Be right back. Sam, Amico, Cavs on the Break.
Hey everyone, I'm Holly Wetzel.
And I'm Jeremy Powell.
And we are your hosts of The Orange is Oranger, a Cleveland Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network. We give you all the dog pound coverage that you'll need each week to get you ready for kickoff and beyond.
Don't miss our breakdowns of each week's matchups, game recaps, and any and all news out of Berea to feed your Browns appetite. As we all know, Holly, dogs got to eat.
That's right, Jeremy. Hit that subscribe button and never miss an episode of the Orange is Oranger Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network.
Looking for new insights on the Cleveland sports scene with a unique side of Cleveland sports history? Then you found the perfect podcast. I'm John Sable.
And I'm Scott Sable, and we're hosts of the Sable Brothers on the Baseline podcast, a podcast about Cleveland sports, but not your typical podcast about the land's sports teams. Join us as we embark on a journey of sharing a unique and historical side of Cleveland sports history with the help of some former Cleveland sports stars and other historical figures.
All right here on the Sable Brothers on the Baseline podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
For the Dennis Maniloff Show, I'll tap into my 40-plus years of following Cleveland sports and 30-plus years of writing and talking about them, so as to bring you informed opinions and analysis of your favorite players and teams. I also will monitor the national sports scene and, when warranted, step out of the toy department and into the real world. And I'll always be on the lookout for special guests. By all means, join us.
The R&R podcast going to be rocking and rolling with you because football season is underway. College, Ohio State, the Power Fives, the MAC, the Browns. Michael Regai, are you ready to rock and roll with some football?
Kenny, I've been ready. This is our time of year. This is what R&R is all about. We're going to be with you every week. Kenny just said it. Browns, NFL, Ohio State centric. So you got to stay with us all fall and winter long here on R&R.
That's right. The Regai and Rhoda podcast coming to you here on the Press Play Podcast Network. Subscribe now and don't miss a show.
Hey everybody, I'm Gary. And I'm Jason. Opening cards as a kid, no matter what was in the pack, you always had that stick of chewing gum. Well, it turns out Gary and I opened up a box of 86 Tops last year, and let me tell you, the chewing gum does not age well.
Join us on the Ball Card Show,
the sports podcast for the sports collector.
Hey, it's Tito, host of the Premier Fantasy Podcast. Get all the news and analysis you need to dominate your fantasy league. I've been doing this as long as anybody in the business. I can help give you the edge in your leagues. It's the Premier Fantasy Podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hello, Brooks here with the Books with Brooks monthly book club podcast. Listen, it is beyond time for you to join a book club. I know you've been thinking about it, and everyone's doing it. Here's how Books with Brooks works. We read one book a month, and then we talk about it. Classics like Stephen King's The Shining, debut novels like We Are the Brennans by Tracy Lang, and tons of other compelling, life-changing stories, one book and 1 month at a time. So come read along with us, and then listen in.
Hey everyone, it's JD from the Hyman Podcast. Backed by popular demand, I'm excited to let you know that new episodes of the Hyman Podcast will drop every other Monday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. We're going to continue the conversations we started last season and keep having those hard conversations. There is so much in store for you this season, and I'm excited to share it with you. Subscribe today so you don't miss a single moment. The Hyman Podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hello, this is Don Mike Mendoza, the host of the Producing While Asian podcast. Join us to listen in on conversations with everyone who identify from producers to non-producers who all are part of the AAPI community. There's all that and more on the Producing While Asian podcast here on the Press Play Podcast Network.
All right, we are back. Cavs on the Break, NBA podcast from the Press Play Podcast Network here with Sam Amico. Sam John's hosting every other week with us this season, man. You guys did a great marathon episode a couple weeks ago to preview the season. Next week, he'll be back to talk week 3 and other Cavs news. But right now, you're with me. And when you're with me, you know we do segments, and we like to have some fun, Sam.
I think I did a segment with John. He might have stole one of your segments.
Hopefully, I don't know. Maybe he did this one. I need to go back and re-listen. I don't know. I was out sick for a couple of weeks, and sometimes you lose track of things when you're sick. Anyway, we're gonna do this segment. How does this end, Sam? We've done this one before, where I give you a scenario and you just look into your crystal ball of stuff and you tell me how this ends. Let's start here with the Cavs season. This is good right there. We talked about it all before the break. The Cavs over under for the season is 27.5 wins. Sam, the over is actually favored right now, -130. Sam, how does this Cavs season end? Are we talking playoffs? Playing game? How does this end?
There's so many teams in the East that are good now, because you got to factor in the Hornets and the Wizards, who have been playing very well. I assume the Hawks are still going to be there. The Heat, and obviously you're going to have the Bostons, the New Yorks, the Milwaukees.
I'm really high on the Bulls. Really high on the Bulls.
And the Bulls are there. So it's not, it's not a cakewalk. But if they play like this, they can get into the play-in game. I'm not going to say they'll be a top 8 seed, but they could get in a play-in game and battle for it. And that is a huge step when you consider 19 wins, 22 wins. So if you're asking me to predict after 5 games, I'm going to say they are going to play the Pacers in a play-in game for the 8th seed.
I love that, Sam. I would only love you more if you said we're going to be the 6th seed and not have a play-in game.
Be the 6th seed, beat the 3rd seeded Sixers, and be on our way.
Let's go, baby. It does feel like a little more hopeful than last season.
Absolutely. And again, I know, look, Chase, they started great under John Beeline too. They were 4-5. Everybody was fired up about John Beeline, and then the wheels came off.
Woo,
and then last year, of course, they started pretty well. People were excited. I think you said they were 3-1. And then when the Drummond and the KPJ situations really set them back last year, just as an entire unit, the whole team felt that they would deny it or whatever, but it was a distraction. And then they had a ton of injuries at the end of the year. But the thing that's different this year again is the fact that they do have the pieces. They are, for the most part, healthy, and they had 3 very impressive wins. They weren't they weren't beating up on the Raptors at home or the
right. Well, last year they beat the 76ers, which was a good win.
But I just
you're right. You're right.
Year, you're going on the West Coast. That's tough for anybody in such a young team that they just don't seem to know any better. Like, we're supposed to lose, so we'll go out and lose. They're young and they're like, you know what, let's just go have fun and defend and see what happens, and it's working. So they keep doing this. They stay healthy. You got to have a little luck. They'll be in the mix.
Love it. Love it. Love it. All right, here we go. Speaking of love, K-Love and Rubio. I'm going to do those guys together because they played together in Minnesota, and there's rumors if they keep playing this well, they're going to be really attractive trade pieces, Sam. So how does this end for K-Love and Ricky Rubio in Cleveland? Do they stay on the team, help us make the playoffs, or are they flipped?
I think if they continue down this path, they'll stay on the team. Love is going to be hard to move anyway because of his deal. Rubio will be much easier to move because he has an expiring contract. Teams are seeing what he can do, but the Cavs aren't going to just give him away, especially if they keep playing like this. If things start to fall apart a little bit, and before February, before the trading deadline, I suspect Rubio will be moved. Although, again, if they're playing well, he's not a guy who's looking at the bright lights in the big city of LA or New York or Chicago. He'd be happy to just stay here, help these guys, young guys develop. He seems to enjoy his role. He likes Bickerstaff. He seems to like Cleveland from everything he said. So, he could be re-signed here too. That might be an option.
That'd be great
before the trading deadline. So the bottom line is, I think I'm going to stay positive and say that they're both going to stay because the Cavs are having success and they're not going to want to move them. The only way they'd want to move those guys is if the wheels came off and it's like, well, we can go get some more young pieces for Rubio because we're not going anywhere this year. And he's got an expiring deal anyway. He may not resign. All those questions obviously have yet to be answered. But I think that they're going to end up staying here for another year. Love, I think the offseason will bring a trade, if not the deadline. But, that's not a big deal. If you trade Kevin Love, you got to take salary back. So they might as well just keep his salary as long as he's content doing what he's doing.
Yeah. All right. And I understand, hey, we're middle of Slate too. So looking really deep into your crystal ball here, which is part of the fun of the segment. How does this end? What about this one? Colin Sexton. How does this end? Extension? Where are we at here, Sam?
Man, that is a tough one this soon because everything before the season pointed toward, potentially a trade. If not now, then a sign and trade like Lonzo Ball had with the Pelicans at the end of last season when he was a restricted free agent, as Colin Sexton will be. I think that possibility still exists, regardless of what they do, unless they, if they end up getting the 8th seed or something, then yeah. But they're not going to just tear apart the team. New Orleans traded Ball. It hasn't gone real well for them yet. Obviously, they don't have Zion, but the pieces they got back have just not been much in terms of contributing early. So you want to be careful in that area. If this continues to look like it's Chase and this continues to mesh, well, then you have your answers. And I've said that before the season. This is the year the Cavs figure out if Garland and Sexton are going to be a match.
Yeah.
That didn't mean that the answer is no. It just meant that it's not yet yes. The way they played over the past few games, everybody's a match. And when that's the case, you just fill in around them as much as you can. If this season continues to go like it's going, which is admittedly a big if, but if it does, I think the one guy you'll see get traded is Chetty. That's the one guy they would probably trade. You're not going to get a whole lot back for him, but you could get somebody either younger or you'll get a pick and you use Lamar Stevens in his spot. And, you keep a small eye on the future. So they keep playing like this. I don't foresee any blockbusters. It'd be dumb to do it. And I don't think that's what Kobe Altman wants.
All right. And final, how does this end? Evan Mobley. Where are we at with Evan Mobley at the end of this year? Offensive Rookie of the Year. Is that a possibility?
Well, they only have one.
Or Rookie of the Year. Sorry. I'm in football.
You're thinking NFL.
Yeah, I am.
Orange is Orange, your podcast sign behind you.
It is. And I was on the pod this week. I was on the pod
Steelers.
this week for the first time, which was nice. Okay. But yeah, Holly Wetzel's. I'm not even hosting that one, Sam. I don't do a lot of pods anymore. I got to get all my podding done with you, man. This is where it's at.
Wow.
See,
I feel honored.
Rookie of the Year, Evan Mobley. Is that where we're at?
I'm going to say yeah.
Yeah. I love it. All right, here we go. Okay.
Yeah, I think you think about if they stay, the trajectory continues the way it's going. Yeah, you'd have to, because I don't know. Cade Cunningham has been hurt. Green looks, but the Rockets are still terrible. I'm just going to say yeah, because I just think he's got that type of ability. He's already getting a ton of buzz. Obviously, in the NBA, when it comes to writers and a writer who used to have a vote, it used to be, when it came to MVP and stuff, it would be, what have you done for me lately kind of thing. How well has your team done overall? What kind of impact did you make in terms of wins and losses? So there'll be a lot of things to be considered. But if the guy's been the rookie of the early season, I'll say that, he's been the best rookie of the early season, other than maybe Scotty Barnes in Toronto has had a great beginning.
Duarte
with the Pacers has had a great beginning as well. So those three guys right now, you throw Mobley in there.
Yeah,
I think that he's probably got the edge over the other two, only because the way the Pacers are terrible right now. They're 1-4. The Raptors are and I just think that. Now, granted, I've only seen each of those guys play once, so I'm a little biased. But
hey, it's okay. I'm going to be biased on this podcast.
It's a crystal ball, right?
Yeah, it's a crystal ball.
So yes, Mobley wins Rookie of the Year.
Last one, Sam. Look real deep into this one. All right. If I gave you the odds of Evan Mobley's NBA MVP at 0.5 for his career, would you take the over or the under? So if I said,
I'd take the over. He's got more than a 0.5 to win NBA MVP someday.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a better chance than 0.5.
So no, that would be like for his career, how many NBA MVPs would he win? So I'm essentially asking, is he going to win one or more or none? Does that make sense? Yeah.
Okay.
Like the number of MVPs he's going to win in his career is 0.5.
Okay.
You going to take the over on that, or are you just going to take the under?
That's tough. Sometimes I'm going to take the under only because I think that the MVP award is a weird thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. You know, I see a little in terms of impact, Kevin Garnett.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he doesn't play with that same rage, but if you look at Kevin Garnett as a rookie, he averaged like 10 points a game. He didn't play with the kind of rage that he retired with. But I see that type of impact from Mobley. And if he makes that impact, he's going to win an MVP. I think Garnett had to have won one, didn't he? I don't know. He should have.
I'll say this. Evan Mobley would be the only player on the Cavs team I would entertain any.
Well, yeah. Yes. Agreed.
And that fact alone should make all fans excited. That he'd be the only one you'd even think about. Could it happen?
Yeah.
I'll take the over just for fun because I don't know.
Because you're crazy.
I am crazy.
Crazy in a good way.
Okoro's over and under for that's 2.5. In case you're wondering. No, I'm totally joking.
Sure it is.
Yeah. Well, that's how does this end? This segment is over. That's how that ends. So Sam, thank you so much. One more thing before we log off here, Sam. Week 3 slate. You're talking about this with John next week. We play in Charlotte against the Hornets. We're home against the Blazers. In Toronto, Scotia Bank Arena against the Raptors, and then an MSG and the Knicks. I think we're going to see Sexton or Garland show up in Madison Square Garden. I think those are one of the players that I think we're going to beat the Blaze. Sam, I mean, I don't want to get too excited, but I'm pretty excited about week 3 slate for the Cavs.
Yeah, you know what? If they play like this, every game is going to be worth watching. You know, again, there's going to be some games where they come out and lay an egg. It's just going to happen. But by and large, if this is your overall picture, that this team and this way it's been playing, it's going to defend. They're going to tick some people off, and guess what? They're going to surprise some people, I guess I should say, and tick them off. But the good news is, if you're playing defense like this, all of a sudden they're starting to believe.
Yeah, defense translates.
That gets scary. Last year we saw with the Atlanta Hawks started to believe in the playoffs. The Phoenix Suns started to believe in the playoffs. And if the Cavs, start to believe throughout the regular season, you never know. Baby. It should be a lot of fun. Our podcasts are going to be a lot more listened to.
Oh, dude!
Despite the fact
we started the Browns pod and they had won 1 game in 2 years, man.
Yeah, I'm sure that was then all you got to do is talk about what they can possibly do.
That's true.
But anyway, I'm equally excited for the Browns game. I had an opportunity to go, but I turned it down. My own son invited me, and I said, I watched it on TV. And he said, that's okay. I can take my friend. So I was like, man. Oh, well, that offer went away fast.
Real quick. No, that's great. Well, that does it for this episode of Cavs on the Break NBA podcast. Thank you all so much for downloading and listening. Shouts to the Press Play Podcast Network for making this possible. Thank you, P3. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Cavs on the Break. We always follow back. And follow Sam on Twitter at Amico Hoops. Get all of his works and writings at hoopswire.com and outkick.com. Breaking news, insider info. Do not miss out. Sam, any final thoughts, my man?
That's it. Just enjoy the ride. If it keeps going like this, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Fun times, fun times, fun times. Mike Breen, take us out.
Congratulations, Cleveland. Your decades-long wait is finally over. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.